distant rumbling. The ground trembles. You hear thousands of voices shouting and cheering as one. Then, all of a sudden, you see cavalry appearing on the ridge of a hill. Half a mile across the battlefield, the rumble becomes thunder. More shapes appear. Horses, men, steel. A few hundred, then 1,000, even 10,000. Avalanche growing wider, deeper, unstoppable. February 1807. The small Prussian town of Eylau. Here, French and Russian armies collided in one of the most brutal, blood-soaked battles of the Napoleonic Wars. And here, on this frozen ground, history witnessed what may have been the largest cavalry charge ever unleashed on a battlefield. Today, we strip away the legend. How massive was this charge really? How wide was the formation? How deep? How many riders really thundered forward? If you ever wondered what 12,000 cavalrymen might have truly looked like, this is the episode for you. But first, let's recall the hours before the charge. On the morning of February 8th, Napoleon's army stood on the brink of collapse. All French attacks failed, their centers shattered. Russian regiments pressed forward, advancing towards Napoleon's command post at Eylau itself. For a brief moment, it seemed the emperor might face a defeat unlike any he had ever known. Around noon, the Russians used the disarray of the French center to pursue and attack the French base position at Eylau itself. Only the intervention of the French Imperial Guard prevents another disaster. Still, Napoleon's position is wavering and he needs time to consolidate his formation. He decides for one last roll of dice and uses his only intact force left. At 1 p.m., the all-or-nothing moment has arrived. Murat's cavalry reserve assembles to the right of Eylau. The Russians have no idea what is about to be unleashed upon them. Their realization comes as a shock. The French, in a ludicrous maneuver, entirely unexpected, have assembled not only some squadrons, it's their entire cavalry that emerges to the right of Eylau. It is an avalanche made of flesh and steel. At least 10,000, maybe 15,000 riders of all sorts, cuirassiers, hussars, dragoons, even the guard cavalry, all aimed for the Russian center. But for now, I want to ask the question, how large was this avalanche really? Depending on the respective sources, numbers vary quite a bit. Therefore, the main goal will be to visualize the dimensions. Let's try to break it down. A typical warhorse plus rider occupied about 1 to 1.5 meters in width and 2.5 meters in length. For the final attack, the gaps between each rider were closed, riding knee by knee, forming an impenetrable wall of men and horses. Let's continue with the smallest, useful tactical unit, the squadron. A squadron consisted of around 100 to 200 or more riders, depending on unit type. Assuming an average of 150 men per squadron, they span across 115 meters in width and 6 meters in depth. 3 to 6 squadrons made a regiment, roughly 300 to 600 riders. The required strength was much higher, but considering losses suffered from the campaign, 450 will be our number. Therefore, we double the previous width, which gives us about 250 meters. These regiments, clustered together, formed an entire cavalry division. These divisions could vastly differ in composition and numeric strength. For example, D'Hautepoule's Cuirassier division we see here consisted of 3 regiments or 1,800 riders. At Eylau, Most likely 30 to 40 horse regiments were joining the charge, formed up in 8 divisions. Even if we adopt the lower historic estimates of around 12,000 men, the size of the formation becomes almost unimaginable. The charge consisted of several massive waves, around 250 meters or 1 regiment wide, drawn up in dozens of dense lines as ranks were closed with only minimal space in between. Altogether, this bulldozer of flesh and steel stretched 700 to 800 meters into the depth of the battlefield. To put it into contemporary context, that's approximately 7 to 8 football fields. The effect must have been overwhelming. The ground shook, the air filled with shouts and the metallic clatter of thousands of sabers and cuirasses. Few men on earth had ever witnessed such a sight, and many would not survive it. Yet the question still remains, was this a valid tactic? Against well-trained infantry in square formation, cavalry was almost powerless. No horse would willingly hurl itself against the wall of bayonets. When the momentum of the charge faded, the now immobile cavalry was an easy target for both muskets and close-range artillery shooting canister shot, like an oversized shotgun. As soon as the cavalry lines broke, chaos and confusion results. The whole action only lasts tens of minutes, then the riders disperse and turn back. The precise formation, depth of penetration, and how Murat's cavalry maneuvered remain uncertain. What we do know points to a frontal breakthrough and a retreat back along the very corridor they carved through the Russian ranks. Some sources assume that the charge took a U-turn and broke through the enemy line twice, the second time on its way back, which seems unlikely considering the already mentioned difficulty with coordinating such a huge formation. However it may have really been, you can make up your own mind whether this attack was genius or lunacy or simply desperation. Fact is, the charge achieved its goal, and the mere shock created the desperately needed breathing space for Napoleon and the French army, although under heavy losses. 2,000 horses and riders had to pay the ultimate price, and thousands of Russians met the same fate. One way or another, this charge entered the history books and was fuel for the glorification of the French war narrative and Napoleon's personal nimbus, even though the battle was nearly lost by the French. What do you think about the charge? Genius, boldness, or utter desperation? Also tell us how you like this more detailed format. Let us know in the comments, we'd love to join the discussion. Also make sure to watch part 1 and 2 of the Battle of Eylau for the full story. See you next time at History Reloaded.